Welcome to Immigration Quicktake. This is Ellie Rutledge Silver with the American Immigration Lawyers Association. Last week, the Department of Homeland Security's Advisory Committee on Family Residential Centers issued a report in which it unanimously concluded detention is not appropriate for families. Here to share details from the report and the meeting where it was adopted is Karen Lucas, Associate Director of Advocacy. Karen, thanks for joining me. What is the primary recommendation?
Well, the committee's primary recommendation, their overarching recommendation, and the recommendation that they put front and center was that the government should avoid detaining families, that detention is generally neither necessary nor appropriate for this extremely vulnerable population. And during the voting this past Friday, the committee members expressed that all of their other recommendations in the 159-page report should be viewed in light of that primary recommendation. And moreover, I found it striking that throughout the report, the committee expressed substantial frustration that at ICE's lack of transparency to them and ICE's failure to provide them with necessary data and information for them to do their job. And this goes to really important pieces of information like the length of detention, the process for communicating with rare language speakers in detention, and even the criteria that ICE and CBP officers use for making detention and custody decisions in the first instance.
What other recommendations are in the report?
So going along with the committee's overarching recommendation to avoid detaining families, the committee further found that the government should not be placing families into expedited removal and reinstatement of removal, to fast-track administrative removal mechanisms that really undermine due process and their ability to present their claims. The committee also found substantial difficulties with ICE's facilitation of access for counsel. And the committee itself went so far as to say that they recommend without reservation that the government actually provide counsel for these families, given how important counsel is to a fair process. And then with respect to access to counsel in the facility, the committee had strong, lengthy recommendations for ways that ICE should facilitate that access and stop hindering that access. The committee further made recommendations with respect to language access, and the committee was particularly concerned about the kinds of access that rare language speakers face in family detention. And went so far as to recommend overall that individuals who speak these rare languages that ICE cannot accommodate should not be detained and should be issued a notice to appear and should be released. The committee had further recommendations on the medical and mental health access front and really documented the ways in which detention itself is traumatizing to an already traumatized population, and found that the existing standards and practices that ICE has are woefully insufficient and not in line with best practices.
What does this mean for family detention?
Well, I think it's going to be very hard for this administration and the next administration to ignore the substantial research, findings, and recommendations of this report. This committee was put together and tasked by the federal government to evaluate its family detention practices. And the conclusion was unanimous. And I think it will be very hard for the administration to ignore this. And I hope that it will go a long way to getting us to a point where we end family detention.
Thanks, Karen, for joining us. For the rest of you, please stay tuned for more updates from the American Immigration Lawyers Association.